I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. It's Friday. Yes, Friday is finally here. I hope you guys are pumped and excited for the weekend. I know I am. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Although I think I'm going to be taking this Monday off. It is a holiday anyway. I might be doing away with Mondays altogether. We'll get into that another time. But anywho, shout out to all of you watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. I want to go ahead and say hello to a couple of people in the chat. Shout out to Lulu. Lulu, welcome. I do not know what this means, but welcome. What's going on? Hannah G says Friday night chill with Sabby. Shout out to Angela, who's a Sabby member, says, hello, Sabby and people of the chat. Matt Taibbi had a response to the smears on his Substack, very concise and calm, but this is all getting beyond ridiculous. I agree. Hashtag like button smash. Shout out to Robin, says, must view YouTube. Your segment on Bree and Robbie was fire. Let's do this. Oh, Robbie got me heated. He got me heated in that segment. I'm sorry. Greetings, Eric. Sup, y'all. This should be an awesome show, like always. And a fun question for you, Sabby. Should Robert Kraft fire Bill Belichick, given how this season went down? I think it's time for Bill to go. I think Bill had his best years here in Boston, and I think it's time for him to move on to something else. But I do see that my guest is here. Jordan, if you're ready, just go ahead and give me a thumbs up. All right, let me go ahead and bring you in. Welcome, Jordan.
Hello.
All right, guys, my special guest tonight is Jordan Flowers. He is the co-founder of Amazon Labor Union and the Congress of Essential Workers. All right, Jordan, I've been trying to get you guys for so long. I know you guys are so busy. You got a lot going on. The last time I spoke with Chris was almost 2 years ago when he was starting like all the organizing and everything. And he told me about what happened at the warehouse in reference to the way the workers were treated, not having PPE, workers coming to work sick, etc. And then here we are, fast forward, the fight really did pay off. You guys were able to unionize like the first Amazon warehouse, which is huge. It's significant. So I definitely wanted to talk to you about what has happened like since then, because I can imagine you guys are super, super busy. So how's it been so far?
So great news. We actually got certified as of Wednesday. So we are an official union of Amazon at JFK. The issues right now, it's been the same thing before the certification. The workers are still having issues, breaks, and we're still there to support and fight them. And, solidifying this certification just brings us one step closer to our contract. So, it's just, pushing forward right now. It's just pushing forward.
How has it been for some of the other warehouses? I know there was another warehouse, I believe, in New York City that was also trying to unionize after your win. How are things going now? Because one of the things I read is that Amazon is obviously trying to make it more difficult for other warehouses to do the same thing.
So, yes, that was ALB1. Up there, it's difficult. It's a different scenario. It's a different scene. The concept of trying to organize on property was harder, but I mean, we did what we could do as much as we can in ALB one. It's just with the union busing going on and they're ramping it up. How can I put this? It's they are making it harder. I should definitely say that because they're having classes almost every 20 minutes, every day, every shift. So we're talking about thousands of workers in a union busing class. So these struggles that these workers are facing, and then them union busing just makes it more of a tactic for us. That's hard.
Why do you think, because this is one of the questions that comes up often. This came up when I brought on some of the Starbucks workers that were trying to unionize too. Why do you think some of the employees are afraid to start a union? Because for me, like, I've never been a part of a union, but for me, if someone came to me with that option, to me, I'm thinking, yes, I would definitely like for us to start a union. Why do you think some of the employees are feeling like, I guess, a little skeptical to do so?
Definitely wages. They must like the pay and the benefits that they're getting. Again, Amazon. In my facility, JFK, we were getting paid weekly. We had great insurance, and basically, with not the time so much, but just scheduling that they had always accommodated workers. But at the same time, like, you know, most workers are being targeted, and most workers are being targeted, and it's unfair. So definitely sorry. Oh my God.
It's okay.
Sorry, I got a lot of things running through my head right now. But it's definitely with the union. It's because again, saying union inside Amazon is like the bad word. It's that word that would get you in trouble, and it's that fear that Amazon puts and the profits that they're making. And you know, a lot of workers are scared to speak up. So I mean, now with unions on the rise, it's showing more worker power coming back, and that, you know, workers are now not afraid to take that stance. But it's definitely big corporations, like the way they start treating their employees and how they have them in a consistent system.
Have any of the employees, to your knowledge, been fired for trying to unionize?
Oh, definitely. Chris got terminated. Gerald Bryson, another co-founder. I myself got terminated as of last year. There's been plenty of workers. We actually also had a fire probably 4 months ago, and we had the whole ALU staff suspended. So yeah, so we actually ended up getting those workers back. We actually got our organizers back in the facilities. So
for the workers that were suspended, were they suspended without pay?
No, they were suspended with pay.
This is interesting. And I know this costs money. Has the union looked for a lawyer to prevent these types of things from happening? Because technically, this is just what I've read for some of the other companies I've worked with. Technically, that's considered retaliation, and they're not supposed to do that. Has there been talks of trying to find like maybe a lawyer to protect you guys from that happening?
So definitely, we have a lawyer named Seth Goldstein, Ritu and Ria. These are some of our lawyers that deal with which is called the unfair labor practice. So definitely, we've been filing a bunch of those because the way Amazon's been treating our organizers themselves, it's like they don't even want us to organize indoors. Like they're really trying to prevent us to even come inside. So
yeah,
we definitely have lawyers. Yeah, we do have top lawyers that are ready to follow these unfair labor practices.
Yeah, the Starbucks said something similar like that too. I want to show people, this is an announcement that came from Chris Smalls recently, and it says, breaking news, we officially have been certified by Region 28 NLRB. Congrats, Amazon Labor. We beat Amazon fair and square. Now it's time to sign a contract. Come to the table. So could you explain to people, Jordan, why is this contract so important?
This would be the first ever contract inside of Amazon. It took us almost over a year and a half just to organize JFK. It took me, Chris, Derek, Gerald almost 2.5 years just traveling and exploiting Amazon and, you know, exploiting the truth and the propaganda and, you know, the expenses that he's been paying for and the profits he's been making during the pandemic. So, I mean, with this being our certification now, it's one, like I said earlier, it's one step closer to our contract, which now legally they have to sit down with us.
This is amazing. So I just wanted to show this to you guys here, if you can see it. Oh, I actually made it smaller when I did that. Sorry. But yeah, this is the contract here that Chris posted, and it says Amazon.com Services LLC employer and Amazon Labor Union petitioner. And there's the case number there. So they actually have a contract now, which is phenomenal. Quick question in reference to other unionizing efforts. I've seen Chris support other union efforts as well. I've seen Chris everywhere, at least on the pictures, because I've seen him like standing with some of the strippers that wanted to unionize and all these other different businesses that are trying to do the same thing. And I know, like I said, I know you guys are super, super busy, but I just wanted to say to people how especially important solidarity can be in this kind of fight. One of the things I did ask one of the Starbucks workers is that would they have been interested in trying to get other, restaurant workers to organize as well, like just one big club of like the restaurant workers organizing together. And they said, well, yeah, we didn't think about that. No one presented that idea to us, but looking back on it, it makes sense because we've seen Chipotle workers have tried to organize. They've been hitting a lot of challenges with them. One of the stores actually closed and because they were trying to unionize with Chipotle. So some of these other, I think companies, they're having a bit of a difficult time. Starbucks actually has been doing the same thing. They've been closing some of their locations instead of allowing these employees to unionize, which is absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. What do you think? What kept you guys motivated? Because I know, like I said, I talked to Chris Smalls like almost 2 years ago. And so I'm just wondering, like, how do you keep going? How do you not give up?
So what a lot of people don't know is that at the time, me, Chris Smalls, and Gerald, we were all terminated. And Derek was actually still the only one employed. So when we started traveling as the Congress of Essential Workers, we actually used our unemployment money and self-invested into this. So we, again, once we came back to form ALU and we was at the bus stop, again, it was us four. We had Connor Spence and we had Brett Daniels. And again, JFK, it's our community. We've been there more than 3 or 4 years. So we already know the employees. We know the suffering that they're going through. We know the pains. We know the statistics in the game. And again, it's like, we came here for a reason and we're fighting this fight for you, like for the workers. And then more workers started to join, which formed the ALU. And again, it's just that, it's a lot of self-investment and, really talking to workers and actively engaging with workers. I should also say, when we started actively engaging with more workers and workers that didn't even know what a union was, and they started seeing the perks and benefits. We had some employees that were terminated before the union and we were able to get their job back. And, it's little factors like that also, boosted the union's momentum inside JFK. So it was always actively engaging with the workers. Even if we didn't know them or we knew them, it was just actively engaged.
That's amazing. Have you guys faced any type of pushback when you've gone to other Amazon warehouses to talk to workers?
Definitely in Albany, we had plenty of times the cops were called on us because they say we were trespassing, but we were Amazon employees. We had Amazon employees that were able to go on property. We didn't have it's a lot.
See how they use things like trespassing to get rid of you.
Mm-hmm. We also had managers come out and they're trying to say that we're breaking the law or we can't be here. We're not an employee at that facility, but it's like we're all Amazon employees. So if I'm if I'm able to be accessing JFK, I should be able to be on property in ALB1 because I'm an active Amazon employee. So it's little tactics like that. There's always, again, like I said, there's always the cops. The cops is always involved. But at this time, we also told the cops that the cops are union too. You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you trying to fight us when this corporation's treating us bad? We're here to fight for the workers. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, it was a lot of cop activity, but it was definitely like really, really ramping up bad.
So now that you guys have this contract, Amazon cannot come back, just to make sure everyone understands this. Now that you have this contract, they can't come back and say, I'm sorry, you can't have this union here, correct?
Correct. So that certification basically states that we are the official union just for that facility right now. and we actively work with those employees. But we are working with other buildings to start their ALU campaigns. But for now, this one right here is just for JFK, and then this certification gets us one step closer to the contract.
Awesome. Now, since then, so are you back at that location?
No. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No. Actually, Amazon has been calling me because I know they knew that they wrongfully terminated me. They're trying to put me on disability leave services. They're trying to get me with the Hartford, which is their insurance company. But again, my argument is y'all can't put me on disability if I'm not an active employee. And even if they appeal it and then I get denied, like that still defeats the purpose of them opening these cases. I'm not an active employee, so nah. Yeah, that's what I've been personally going through in the last few days.
Would you feel comfortable going back to that location?
No.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Just because my health, I'm on the kidney transplant list. And I mean, COVID's not as high, but COVID's still around, cold's still around. I can still get easily sick, and I don't want to like put my life in jeopardy working in this facility.
Well said. Well, you've definitely like fought the good fight here. I'm curious because I know there's a lot of you guys. I know it's not just you and Chris, but how do you guys like see how do I want to put this? How do you continue to explain to people like why this is so important for them to do? Because some people are afraid. Like I've talked to people on here before. We had an activist summit at RBN. Some people are afraid to start a union because they're afraid that they're either going to be fired or they're going to be pushed out of their job, or they're going to have a difficult time trying to get a job somewhere else. This particular story received national news. Like I saw it on mainstream media. I think Chris was on, I always forget this guy's name. I can't remember if it was John Oliver or it was one of them. One of the late night shows.
It was the late night show.
Yeah. So you guys have gotten a lot of attention. Like, how do you continue to, I guess, maintain like your humbleness, but at the same time realize that you did something really great here that should be celebrated?
Well, I mean, it's not that we just won our fight. The fight's always going to be there. It's going to be a continuation fight. And the more buildings means more workers are going to stand up. So, I mean, just for us to start, and now we're starting to see more facilities when they come along, it just shows that, again, more workers are starting to stand up and ready to fight back. Because, again, Amazon's been around for almost 20 employees being mistreated for all these years. And, I mean, again, like a lot of people, yes, there are a lot of people that are scared to speak up, but there's a lot of risks that we took, but we were doing it for the employees of JFK to let them know that, you know what I'm saying, like we need to stand up as one community and fight back. And again, we traveled the world and exploited his expenses and his propaganda and all the stuff he was doing, especially the rocket ship, the best thing we always talk about. Again, like that's the best thing we always mention to employees. Like if you ever want to know what Jeff Bezos thinks of you, go to that interview because he stated he thanked you for sending him to space when that money could have came back to us during COVID and be treated fairly. But no, he'd rather use it on himself. So this is why we tell him like, that by you guys having a union, we can cut that and start bringing that money back to us, and we can start using it. Yeah, we can start using it for our community.
That's right. I'm not sure if you heard this, but Amazon announced that they're about to lay off thousands of workers. And it's not just them, like Facebook and I believe, was it Intel? It's a lot of the tech companies that are also laying off thousands of workers. But I know Amazon was one of the ones that announced too. Do you think that has something to do with the workers trying to unionize, or do you think that's more so due to inflation?
Oh, definitely. I mean, with inflation with Amazon, like Amazon is holding the world's money right now. So money's not a problem for Amazon, but it's definitely workers starting to speak up. And I mean, again, we knew that Amazon's going to try to fight back. So workers that are going to try to organize, y'all might deal with some termination or suspension. But when you keep going to that facility where you work at and you keep standing your ground, workers are going to start coming to you and supporting you. And this is how you start fighting back, and that's how you start a fight. And then this is when you start tagging along. And again, like I said, Amazon Labor Union has a bunch of facilities that are in the works of unionizing, and this is when we start going on the front line.
Well said. What advice would you give to someone that's thinking about starting a union? Like the pros and the cons, what would you tell them ahead of time? Or what is it that you wish someone would have told you before you decided to unionize?
So I'm actually still in the learning process. But my mom was $11.99, so I do know some of the perks. I had some of the perks when I was younger, but definitely it's wages. You can always get a higher wage. You get treated better. You can be able to move up in the company if you want to. It offers a lot of benefits. And again, even with medical or whatever you need, that this is what the union has to offer. If you have a kid that has to go to school, we can help accommodate you and your family. Hey, it's just that this company says that they care for you, but realistically, they're making you slave these hours out and then expect you to come to work the next day on your best behavior. But at the same time, you're waking up out of bed thinking if you have a job the next day or not.
That's right. They can turn on you at any time. Well, we've seen this happen to people, especially last year. After inflation started, people were being laid off again, left and right. So in reference to this particular warehouse, have you heard anything about layoffs happening at that facility so far?
So far, it's been not layoffs, but there've been a lot of suspensions. So, and we're also starting to see that with our facility, they start suspending workers and then terminating them probably a week or two later, which is starting to become a problem. So we have lawyers right now that's on the works of dealing with this. But it's definitely they're definitely laying off right now. There was a point in time where they were actually talking about shutting down this building because we were organizing so good. And again, at that time they're jeopardizing 8,000 jobs right there where they're already making money. It's not that we're stopping them making money, but you know what I'm saying? Like you're about to lay off 8,000 people that have to go on unemployment when unemployment, it started decreasing, but you're just gonna make it rise again. So definitely, it was a scare for some workers that they were afraid again they were going to lose their job just because to us. But again, with us fighting and making sure that these workers stay on the right path, and that Amazon won't pull any tricks, and always having them in court, what I'm saying? This is the fight we have to deal with.
How do they continue to move? Because I'm curious about this, but because they're doing like these layoffs, how do they continue to move the product? Like, how do they continue to make it so that people who have like the Prime memberships, they still get their items within 2 days? I'm curious.
Again, it's Amazon. So if they're even short staffed, they'll either I'll use myself in an instant. If I work from 8 to 9, right, and they're short staffed, they might tell me to work an extra hour or two. So they'll probably make me stay longer. So they'll start targeting certain workers to work longer than others. So that's also been a problem, which is like our mandatory overtime or our voluntary extra time. But they'll start putting it on workers without them even knowing. So definitely they monitor their staff and when they come in and out the building.
What if you can't stay longer? Like, what if it's someone that's like a single mom and they have to pick up their kid from daycare?
She doesn't have enough time. They can end up writing her up, or they could terminate her. But they're not going to try to accommodate you. You have to go by what they give you, basically.
Jeez, you guys hearing that? I'm just talking to the audience. You guys hearing this? This is why we really have to push back. We really have to push back on Capitol, because you see how they can just exploit the people. What are you supposed to do? And then it's so many people, they're scared because they don't want to lose their job because they need the money. They got to pay their rent. But at the same time, it's like the people are being overworked. It's like a modern form of slavery. That's what it feels like to me. It's terrible. It's terrible. I couldn't imagine. I'm just thinking about this now and I'm like, what if you couldn't do it? Like, what if you just couldn't stay that extra hour because you have kids or something,
So a true story, actually, when JFK first opened up in 2018, our first peak season, it started in the middle of November and didn't end until January because we were short staffed the way we opened up, and they were making us work 60 hours a week. So we're talking about, my schedule was Monday to Saturday, 60 hours. And you would only get 1 day off. But once we came into the fight and started, saying like we started explaining to workers, fighting for workers, exploiting Amazon, we actually got that time cut short. So then workers started working 50 hours and they'll have like more days off. So they'll still be able to hit whatever they need for Amazon, but have an extra day off or whatever they need to be accommodated with. So, but definitely true story that JFK's first opening peak season, we had to do 60 hours.
Jesus, I can't imagine. How has the support been from the community? I know a while back, I know that you guys were having a rally. Well, you've had multiple ones, but you were having a rally. And there was one in particular where I remember AOC had, I guess, signed up for this and was supposed to come, did not show up. And then that was, I guess she made a tweet on Twitter that said, congratulations, I guess, after you guys had won. And then there was this back and forth from other people, herself and other people, saying that like she didn't show up, and eventually she did show up with herself and with Bernie Sanders. But how has the support been from other people in the community? And also, have any other politicians from that area, have they shown up to support you guys as well?
So a main one I always love to talk about, Jessica Ramos. She's in Queens. She's a Queens representative. We actually had a fight with Governor Kathy Hochul to get the Warehouse Protection Act, which actually got signed by her Kathy Hochul before the end of the year. So definitely with Jessica Ramos, keep pushing that into her ear. That's another win for us because the Warehouse Protection Act protects Amazon workers or any warehouse worker from getting terminated without any reason. So it's a just cause. Like Amazon can't say just because I wanted to terminate you. They have to give a formal reason now. So that was also, so that was a major win and a major support from us and Jessica Ramos.
Do you believe that had it not been for the fight that you guys did for the Amazon labor union, do you believe that Warehouse Protection Act would have been signed?
No.
This is why the push on the outside is incredibly important. This is why, like organizing, direct action, all of these things that you do within the community outside of the political space, this is why it's so important. But because of their fight, that really put pressure on Kathy Hochul to sign that Warehouse Protection Act so that other people don't have to go through this again.
So, yeah, that was definitely a big win for us because, again, at the same time, before we even got unionized or really started our campaign, again, we had a bunch of workers get terminated, but again, it was probably because of some crazy reason Amazon gave. They stated that I voluntarily resigned from Amazon, which I never did. I was fighting to keep my job and get disability services and accommodations, but again, this is the reason why we have the just cause now. They can't say they wanted to find me just cause. They have to give a reason now. I didn't voluntarily resign, so we know that's a wrongful termination. So with the just cause, that protects more workers now to keep their jobs and not having to worry that they're going to lose their job the next day.
Did you like your job? Like, let's say in the beginning, did you enjoy it? Because when I talked to Chris, one of the things that he said was he actually, liked his job. He just didn't like the way that they were treated.
So I did. I came in as a picker, but they didn't really have me picking for like the first 3 months. They had me doing Amnesty, which is Amazon Robotics. So I was actually a technician. So they didn't have me doing, I ain't gonna say like picking, but they had me picking some days, they had me counting some days. But majority of the time they had me as an Amazon Robotics technician. So I definitely liked working with the robots because it just shows you how much money this man makes, the technology they have. It's how technology is just growing.
Yeah. Could you explain to people, what do you mean when you say being a picker? So what does that mean at Amazon? Yeah.
So being a picker in Amazon is you sitting in the station and you have the robot bring these big yellow pods to you. And the pods have different sections with different items in. So a light will emit on one bin, which say with J4. J4 has a sticker. It will light on J4. You pick J4, you scan it, and you put it in a bin. And once you confirm it's in the bin, that's how you know the order's confirmed. And then with that yellow tote, we send it down the line, which goes to pack singles, AFE, multi-pack, smart pack. And then we have packers who take that item out, pack it up, and then ship it down the line to go to the outbound ship down.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you for explaining that to people, because I know some people are probably like, what does that mean? Well, all I have to say is like super, like congratulations for like everything that you guys have done. I know it's been a long time coming. I know you guys have put in a lot of hard work. Like I said, it was 2 years ago when Chris first talked to me about this. So this just goes to show those of you that are watching as well, like these things aren't done overnight. Like sometimes it does take time. I remember Chris saying that they were going to protest outside of Jeff Bezos' homes. Like I remember, like it was a long fight. It wasn't something that was done very quickly, but you guys continued to push, and this is the end result. So congratulations. Super proud of you guys. And Jordan, thank you so much for coming on. And where can people follow ALU and the Congress organization? Let me know, and I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, the Congress of Essential Workers is like, that's low right now because we've been mainly ALU. So it's really at Amazon labor page. You can follow myself at JTCOEW. Chris Smalls, I don't really remember his name. Derek, yeah, it's too much. But definitely at Amazon labor. Definitely, that's where all the updates, all the information, all the insights, and whatever process, event, or next step, or next building we're fighting for, we'll all be updated on at Amazon labor on Twitter.
Awesome. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome to hear from ALU. Like I said, it's been a long fight, but they kept at it and here they are. So we have to keep fighting back against these oligarchs, you guys. Amazon has a lot of money. Jeff Bezos has a lot of money, and none of these workers should be treated this way, regardless of the name of the employer, period. All right. I want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to patrons, and then we'll go ahead and get into the other news stories for tonight as well. Let me go ahead and bring up the patron peeps. Oh, accidentally shared this. You guys don't need to see that part. All right. Shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabby, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate category. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Just tickety talk, 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 talk. And thank you guys. Thank you so much for your support. I'm in a little bit of a funny, silly mood tonight. I don't know why. So I'm just like tickety, tickety talk. A couple of chats here I want to go to. Bizarro said, F yes. I got to watch my language on YouTube now, you guys. They put out a new profanity rule. F yes. We need ALU posting up right at the entrance of the new Amazon place here in Worcester, Massachusetts. Robert says all of the Amazon workers need to unionize, and then Walmart/Sam's Club, and then all workers. Yes. That's another thing CJ mentioned, that Walmart needs to be next. Tom, thanks for this topic. And people here, we got to wear their down. Maybe civil suits of torts, harms for cash remedies, a thought. And thank you for becoming a member, Tom Mallard. Whoop, whoop. Roger, Sab, thought they were already a union last year. The whole ALU vote that passed. Yeah, this was continuing what happened after that. Yeah, but they just got that contract, Roger. I wanted to call you Robert. They just got that contract. So that's why that's important. Okay. What else are we going to discuss tonight? Let's go ahead and share that beautiful thumbnail for you on the screen here. Boop, 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 boop. All right. Tonight, I am going to discuss interesting stories tonight, you guys. Matt Taibbi, Tulsi Gabbard, Glenn Greenwald, and Jimmy Dore smeared. Yes, I'm not kidding. All 4 of them. We're going to get into that. I'm also going to discuss Joe Biden classified documents. I'm finally going to talk about that tonight. We got to get all into that because they gave more information. We're also going to discuss Harvard University. Oh, they are at it again. What did they do to Kenneth Roth, and why is he being punished? I'm going to get into that story. And I'm also going to discuss Iowa and Idaho ballot initiative wins. We're continuing on with those ballot wins of 2022. So let's go ahead and get started with this Joe Biden classified document story. Because, there's some hypocrisy going on social media. Some people who were ranting about Donald Trump's classified documents. How dare they? How dare he? Lock him up. They don't seem to have that same type of rhetoric towards Joe Biden having classified documents outside of the White House. Now, Joe Biden has a press secretary, and she was questioned about these documents. I actually want to start it off with this clip because I figured we'd start off with a little bit of humor first. Let's see her reaction when she is questioned about Joe Biden and these classified files that he is not supposed to have outside of the White House. Let's get into it.
On these documents, how could anyone be that irresponsible? Isn't that what this president says about mishandling classified documents?
We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
On these documents, how could anyone be that irresponsible? Isn't that what this president says about mishandling classified documents?
We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
On these documents.
So he's asking her about the classified documents. So I guess one of the statements that Joe Biden had made when this information was reported about Donald Trump was that how can he be that irresponsible? So he's asking the same question. He's asking her the same question. This time, though, it's about Joe Biden. Watch the lady in the pink dress. Okay, so here you see the gentleman here. He's the one asking the question. Pay attention to the woman right here in the pink dress behind him. Watch the expression on her face.
How could anyone be that irresponsible?
Look at it. Their facial expressions are cracking me up. I'm sorry. She has like this really stern look on her face. This guy doesn't want to even look up and is like, not me, not it. And she wants to laugh. She's trying to hold in the laugh.
Isn't that what this president says about mishandling classified documents?
We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
And just like that, she's gone with the wind. Gone just like that. Now let's go ahead and get into this story because there's so much to be said here. Now, believe it or not, CNN actually did cover this. I guess this is one of those times where they can't refuse to cover something about Joe Biden because this has been such big news. Let's see how they handled this story. What exactly has happened here? And by the way, there's more than one batch. There was a second batch of documents that have now been discovered. I'm sorry. It's just funny. It's so hypocritical. That's what we get. Okay, serious face. There is now a second batch of documents that have now been discovered as well. So it's more than one batch. And this actually occurred. So let me make it clear. These are not documents that are recent. These are documents that actually happened during the time when Joe Biden was vice president under the Obama administration. Let's get into it. It's too much. I can't take it.
With the fallout from the second batch of classified documents found by President Biden's legal team at a separate location used by Biden after his time as vice president. It presents a growing political crisis for the president and for Democrats. The latest revelation fueling Republicans' claims that Donald Trump is being targeted, receiving unfair treatment as he's being investigated by a special counsel over classified material found at Mar-a-Lago. It is a huge opening for the new pro-Trump House majority, now poised to investigate Democrats, though insist that Biden and Trump cases are not one and the same. CNN's Paula Reed live in Washington. Paul.
Now, this was announced before the information I'm going to present to you after this. So just keep that in mind, that this was before it was announced that there would be an investigation.
Well, it was a different story yesterday, a different story the day before, and now here we go again. It is growing. What do we expect to know about these documents in this second batch? What are we finding out?
Well, we don't know much. And part of that is because the White House is making a strategic decision not to get out in front of this matter. And as you saw at the briefing there, not to answer questions and instead to let things leak out through the media. Now, here's what we've learned from our reporting, and that is that Biden attorneys have found a second set of documents that include classified information at a second location. The first location, of course, was an office here in D.C. As we've reported, Biden's lawyers were clearing out that office back in November and uncovered what we've learned were 10 classified documents, including information about Ukraine, Iran, and the United Kingdom. And those included top secret documents.
Did everybody catch that last part? Including documents that include information about Ukraine and Iran and top secret at the highest level. Merrick Garland is probably not having a good week with this one. Oh, dear.
Now, we've learned that was only known by a small group of advisors, but once they made that discovery, that prompted them to search other locations. But at this point, we have so many questions about this new batch. What is in them? How many were there? Where were they located? And the biggest question right now, is this it? The White House has been very careful not to say definitively that that first batch that was discovered was all there was. But also another big question right now, not for us, but for Attorney General Merrick Garland, whether or not to appoint a special counsel to just take this on.
And that leads me to my next part, because Merrick Garland has made a decision. So I want to go ahead and get into that piece about this story as well. So let's dive right in, okay? Garland appoints special counsel to investigate Biden documents. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, let's get into it. The announcement followed Biden's acknowledgement Thursday morning that a document with classified markings from his time as vice president was found in his personal library, along with other documents found in his garage. Garland said Biden's lawyers informed the Justice Department Thursday morning of the discovery of classified document at Biden's home after FBI agents first retrieved other documents from his garage in December. It was disclosed on Monday that sensitive documents were found at the office of his former institute in Washington. So first and foremost, why did he have classified documents in his garage? What if someone, this is not to suggest anything, but what if someone had broken into his house, broke into his garage, and took those documents? That's how serious this is. Let's go on. Where do things stand? Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed a special counsel to investigate the presence of documents with classified markings found at President Joe Biden's home in Wilmington, Delaware, and at an office in Washington. The Obama-era documents found at President Biden's Delaware home is the third location where potentially classified documents have been discovered. Documents were also found at his former office and former think tank office. Biden said he is cooperating fully and completely with a Justice Department investigation into how classified information and government records were stored. New House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, a California Republican, said of the latest news, "I think Congress has to investigate this." Well, well, well. Look who's being investigated now. Look who's being irresponsible now. Let's listen to the video clip here.
Bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
Mr. President, classified material next to your Corvette. What were you thinking?
That's the same guy. Guys, it's the same guy from the previous clip. It's the same guy. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that at first. Okay.
So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
Mr. President, classified material next to your Corvette. What were you thinking?
Let me, I'm going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, and by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. Okay, so it's not like you're sitting out in the street. But anyway,
people can pick locks. Do you guys realize how dangerous this is at this point in time? Imagine if anyone else had gotten their hands on those documents. This is the president of the United States, you guys. Do you think Joe Biden should run in 2024? Has he proven himself to be responsible?
Yes, as well as my Corvette. But as I said earlier this week, people know I take classified documents and classified material seriously. I also said we're cooperating fully and completely with the Justice Department's review. As part of that process, my lawyers reviewed other places where documents from my time as vice president were stored, and they finished the review last night. They discovered a small number of documents of classified markings in storage areas and file cabinets in my home and my personal library. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn Center. The Department of Justice was immediately, as was done, the Department of Justice was immediately notified, and the lawyers arranged for the Department of Justice to take possession of the document. So we're going to see all this unfold. I'm confident. Thank you very much.
He was even having trouble there reading the statement. Guys, I'm telling you, Joe Biden need to step down. Listen to this.
Classified documents and classified material seriously. I also said we're cooperating fully and completely with the Justice Department's review. As part of that process, my lawyers reviewed other places where documents from my time as vice president were stored, and they finished the review last night. They discovered a small number of documents of classified markings in storage areas and file cabinets in my home and my personal library.
Also in the file cabinets, not just in this locked garage that he's talking about, the steady hand of leadership. That's funny. Also in file cabinets, which people can also break into. Eric says Corvette gate.
This was done in the case of the Biden Penn. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn Center. The Department of Justice was immediately, as was done, the Department of Justice was immediately notified, and the lawyers arranged for the Department of Justice to take possession of the document. So we're going to see all this unfold. I'm confident. Thank you very much.
This man is not serious. Now let me get out of here because I see.
Chelsea, time now for a look at what's new in theaters this
Sorry,
weekend.
I don't know where that woman came to the article. There's one more piece here that I want to mention about who is investigating. So who's investigating? Robert Hur, the former Trump appointed U.S. attorney in Maryland, will lead the investigation, taking over from the top Justice Department prosecutor in Chicago, John Losh, who was earlier assigned by the department to investigate the matter and who recommended to Garland last week that a special counsel be appointed. Hur is to begin his work soon. The extraordinary circumstances here require the appointment of a special counsel for this matter. Now that's Merrick Garland. Let's hear him here.
I strongly believe that the normal processes of this department can handle all investigations with integrity. But under the regulations, the extraordinary circumstances here require the appointment of a special counsel for this matter. This appointment underscores for the public the department's commitment to both independence and accountability in particularly sensitive matters, and to making decisions indisputably guided only by the facts and the law.
Okay, let me come out of here. I really don't like this screen here, how it takes me to another video.
Looking for a
I don't care about that. You know, it does that. It takes me to another video. There's more here. Sorry. One other thing that I wanted to show you as well. This piece here, what they found. So let's go into this because I think this is important. Lawyers found the first in a locked closet in the offices of the Biden Penn Center, Washington, November 2nd, just before the midterm elections. Well, what do you know? But publicly revealed that development only on Monday. So they knew about the first set. They knew about some of these before the midterm elections, but they didn't even admit it until Monday. How corrupt is that? Lawyers found the first set of documents in a locked closet in the offices of the Penn Biden Center. Yes, on November 2nd, and only revealed it on Monday. Richard Sauber, a special counsel to the president, said that after Biden's personal lawyers found the initial documents, they examined other locations where records might have been shipped after Biden left the vice presidency in 2017. This is crazy. Sauber said a small number with classified markings were found in a storage place in Biden's garage in Wilmington, with one document being located in an adjacent room. Biden later revealed that the other location was his personal library. So again, it's not like he forgot. He knew it was that he knew he had it. We have cooperated closely with the Justice Department throughout its review, and we will continue with the cooperation with the special counsel. That's coming from Sauber. Garland said Biden's attorneys located documents in the Wilmington garage on December 20th, and that the FBI agents took custody of them shortly thereafter. The Justice Department was informed only on Thursday. So they found the documents over a month ago. They're just now revealing it. Potential impact with Trump Mar-a-Lago documents. The appointment of yet another special counsel to investigate the handling of classified documents is a remarkable turn of events, legally and politically, for a Justice Department that has spent months looking into the retention of Donald Trump of more than 300 documents with classified markings found at the former president's Florida estate. Though the situations are factually and legally different, the discovery of classified documents at two separate locations tied to Biden, as well as the appointment of the new special counsel, would almost certainly complicate any prosecution that the department might bring against Trump. Because you can't be hypocritical with it. What are they going to do? Oh, what are they going to do and say, well, we're going to be harsher on Trump, but we're going to let Biden slide? So now, even if Trump did do something wrong, they find that he did do something wrong, what are they going to do? What are they going to say? Listen to this one. Biden addresses government records found in former office. I
was briefed about this discovery and surprised to learn that there were any government records that were taken there to that office.
President Biden responding after revelations of potentially classified documents were found in a former office at the Penn Biden Center. The documents were discovered in early November, but the White House only publicly acknowledging them this week. The White House spokesperson declining to address specifics about the timeline.
This is under review by the Department of Justice. I'm not going to go beyond what the president shared yesterday. I'm not going to go beyond what my colleagues at the White House Counsel shared with all of you as well.
Lawmakers wanting to know why there was a 2-month delay in making the discovery public.
What's so surprising to me is that this came out before the election. Why does his Department of Justice treat people differently?
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy referencing the investigation into hundreds of classified documents found at former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. The FBI searched the home and collected more than a dozen boxes of documents that the former president resisted handing over.
The Attorney General should have a clear standard. It should be the same standard regardless of whether you're talking about President Trump or President Biden or anyone else.
In Washington, I'm Amy.
But they don't. That's the thing. But they don't. So yeah, so far, this does not look too good for Joe Biden. It doesn't. And then it goes into the discussion of GOP leaders reacting to the news as well. It really does make Joe Biden look some kind of way. It makes him look like a hypocrite. And honestly, he can't really come out and point fingers at Donald Trump right now for doing the same thing, especially considering the fact that he acknowledged in that article, in a statement, he acknowledged that he told them where the second set was. He told them that one of the documents would be, in the files in his garage. So he knew he had them. It's not like he didn't know. He knew exactly where they were, at least that set, because he was able to tell them where they were. So how long was he going to hold on to that information? Why did he still have those documents all these years later? Why didn't he hand them over? But it's interesting the way that some people, at least in social media, have been hypocritical about this. Some of the same people who came down on Donald Trump for having classified documents are trying to find ways to find excuses for Joe Biden for having classified documents. Now, this is Professor Zinkas. He points this out so effortlessly. Professor Zinkas said, let me see, there's a thing here. I don't know why is it part of it missing? Oh, that's just his thing. Oh, okay, sorry. That was on me, you guys. Whoopsie. Professor Zinkas said Biden had classified documents for 6 years at his house. And this is how liberals are reacting. Look at this. Now, Rob Reiner, he's a special one. Rob Reiner is there. Let me tell you something. If you critique a Democrat politician, Rob Reiner is just waiting in the wings on Twitter to come in and defend them. He is notorious for it. He makes excuses for them multiple times. So listen to what he said. From a political standpoint, I understand why Garland appointed a special counsel to investigate President Biden. As pointless as it is from a legal standpoint, I can accept it. What I won't accept is Trump not getting indicted. Garland, do your job. Rob Reiner, for those who are not aware, he's an actor. I think he's directed a couple of movies too, I think, if I remember correctly. But do you see the hypocrisy? This makes no sense. No sense. You see, this is why people laugh. Let me tell you, here's another one. Okay, this is from Suzanne. She's replying to Rob Reiner. Totally agree. He's playing chess while Republicans are playing checkers. Time to indict. So we're just supposed to forget that Joe Biden has these classified documents? And you only want the attorney general to focus on Donald Trump having classified documents? Guys, do you see how the media has propagandized the American people so much to the point where liberals have their brains wrecked? People really have wrecked their brains. They can't even sit back and look at both of these situations and say, hey, both of these guys took classified documents. This is not cool. They both need to be treated with the same amount of consideration here. They both need to be treated fairly, and they need to get the same process, regardless of who is president right now or not. No, they can't even do that. They got to come up with stuff like do your job and prosecute Trump. This is how I tell you, when you talk about the two-party system, this is exactly how the media will take these things and they will spin it in such a way that it wrecks people's brains so that people can't even tell the difference between the two, so that you can put the same information in front of them about two different people from two different parties, and people will back the person that's from their party, even though they're doing the same damn thing. Welcome to America. Welcome to the propaganda. And it happens more often than people realize. So, not a good week for Joe Biden. Damon Reeves says, were they Medicare for all documents? Angela says, documents everywhere. Here a doc, there a doc, everywhere a doc. Thank you for the super chat, Donnie, who loved bowling. Is that the guy from, is your picture, is that from, oh my God, is that the Big Lebowski? That's what it looks like. Sabby, I assure you, no one was going to be breaking into even his neighborhood. That's a good point. Greg Bruce says, I know many engineers who work for defense contractors and have security clearances. If any of them got caught doing this, they'd be fired immediately and blackballed from all defense contractors. This is serious. Tailgater, Little Red Corvette. Little Prince song there. Kitty Loves Film says, we live in a comic book. Reality is so messed up. Betsy says, I just found classified documents in Kaya's dog bed, and she's originally from Russia. Deanna, is this an attempt by Democrats to remove Biden from office? That's another question that some people are wondering. But he did take the documents, D. And thank you for the super chat drop hammer. I'm a subscriber, but can't chat in sub only chat. No, you're definitely chatting. Make sure, like when you're in the live chat, make sure you click that little bar at the top, because there's an option for top chat and live chat. Make sure you're looking at live chat, because sometimes that happens to people, but I can see you like in the chat. Yeah. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Jeez, what a joke. Thank you for the tip, Roger Meadows. Why do we have to wait until opposite party takes over one chamber of Congress to get investigations? This is bull. I want to see investigations all the time of presidents until they learn how to behave themselves. Only way to do it, abolish all political parties at every level of government. Well said there, Rogers. All right, guys, do me a favor if you haven't had a chance to do so, and go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me with the algo. And we're going to move on to our next story. Harvard University, they've done it again. Last year, I reported on the story about Harvard University refusing to give Cornel West tenure. Now, why did they refuse to do that? Because Cornel West was vocal about his support of the Palestinian struggle. So this goes back to the conflict between Israel and Palestine. So they decided not to give him tenure because of that. Well, they're at it again. This time, they have decided to rescind a fellowship from someone at Harvard, and that person is Kenneth Roth, who is also probably the most popular human rights activist in the country. Now, shout out to Betsy, because she sent me this story. It says Harvard rescinds fellowship offer to leading rights activists. So this is Kenneth Roth. So Kenneth, they're doing him the same way that they did Cornel West. And I'm just going to read this top part, and then I'm going to get into the interview, because he had an interview on Democracy Now! And it says Kenneth Roth, who was the executive director of the Human Rights Watch, or HRW, until last year, was recruited by the Harvard Kennedy School's Carr Center for Human Rights Policy to become a fellow, and he accepted. But a few weeks later in July, Roth said the center called and told him that the dean of the school, and that's Douglas, had not approved it. Now, I want to go ahead and get into the interview here with Democracy Now! And Kenneth Roth, but I do want to say this first. I think something that you have to understand about Harvard University, and I say this as someone who lives in the Boston area here in Massachusetts, and I've worked at Harvard University. With all of these universities, you first have to ask, who are their donors? Similar to politics, right? The higher education system follows a similar model to the US government. That's actually where it came from, where you have a president of the university, you have donors, just like politicians have donors, the board of trustees, you have your deans, you have your faculty, your staff, and your students, and then you have the service workers. And when you look at who donates to Harvard University, that may help you understand why they may have some of the views that they have. Now, by they, I don't mean the individuals, I mean the institution. Did you know that once upon a time, Harvard University actually participated in eugenics? They don't talk about that. Shh, that's a secret. I should do a show just about that one day. That could be like a special Sunday stream where I just tell you about that whole story. But if you know who the donors are, and what the donors expect, then that could help you figure some things out. Jeffrey Epstein donated to Harvard University. Michael Bloomberg donated to Harvard University. Robert Kraft donated to Harvard University. And there's many, 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 many more. But the university, in order to keep those donors, they have to please those donors. Those donors can walk. They don't have to renew their donation. Let's get into this interview. I want you to hear from Kenneth Roth. Because like I said, once again, Harvard is at it again, and they need to be called out.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Harvard's Kennedy School of Government is facing growing outcry for rescinding a fellowship for the former head of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth, over his criticism and the group's criticism of Israel's human rights record. Ken Roth is one of the most recognized human rights defenders in the world. He headed Human Rights Watch from 1993 to 2022. In 2021, Human Rights Watch made headlines when it published a major report accusing Israel of committing crimes against humanity, including apartheid. In June, Ken Roth agreed to take a fellowship at the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy inside Harvard's Kennedy School. But several weeks later, Roth learned Harvard Kennedy School Dean Douglas Elmendorf had vetoed the fellowship.
They want him to work in the human rights organization, but they only want him to talk about certain human rights. Depending on the country, they don't want you to talk about it. That's the problem. Let's go on.
Roth was told it was because he criticized Israel. The American Civil Liberties Union has called Harvard's decision to rescind the fellowship to Ken Roth, quote, profoundly troubling. PEN America has also criticized Harvard's decision, saying in a statement, quote, withholding Roth's participation in a human rights program due to his own staunch critiques of human rights abuses by governments worldwide raises serious questions about the credibility of the Harvard program itself, they said. Kenneth Roth joins us now from Geneva, Switzerland. Ken Roth, welcome back to Democracy Now! Talk about what's happened, what you understand, why it is you are not at Harvard enjoying this fellowship.
Well, I mean, as you just said, it's because I and Human Rights Watch criticized Israel. The Carr Center, the Human Rights Center at the Kennedy School, wanted me. They called me up, as soon as I announced that I would be leaving Human Rights Watch. And it made sense for me to go there because I'm working on a book, and this would be a kind of very logical place for me to try to do that.
He should hook up with Cornel West. Maybe he already has spoken to him about this. But one thing I want to mention before we go on here is that, remember, they went after him. He didn't seek them out. They sought him out. So they invited him to come to the school through a fellowship. They gave the fellowship to him for him to come there. So you mean to tell me, again, I told you this guy's one of the most popular human rights advocates. They didn't do any research about his work, about what he believes, about how he feels. They didn't check to see if he had any speeches, anything. You could just Google. They didn't know what his beliefs and where he stood. They didn't know what that was before they invited him to come there and gave him the fellowship. I find that to be strange.
We thought that that was the end of the story, that the dean's approval of my fellowship would be, a perfunctory matter. It happens all the time. And I was shocked when he vetoed it because of our criticism of Israel. I had a slight inkling of this when I spoke to the dean in July. He asked me after about a half hour, very pleasant, normal conversation. He said, "Do you have any enemies?" I thought it was a bit of a weird question because, as head of Human Rights Watch, I have a lot of enemies. Right. I mentioned to him that, the Chinese government and the Russian government have both personally sanctioned me. Governments like the Saudi government or the Rwandan government hate me. But, I knew what he was driving at. So I mentioned, yes, and of course the Israeli government hates me too. That was the end of the matter. 2 weeks later, I learned through the very respected professor at the Kennedy School, Catherine Sinkink, that Elmendorf, the dean, had told her that it was our criticism of Israel that was the death knell for my fellowship.
We need to say something here. Because he's not alone. Let's remember why Rising removed Katie Halper as guest host. This idea that you cannot critique the state of Israel, the government, we're not talking about individual people, but this idea that you can't even critique the government, an apartheid state, which is what they're trying to become, an apartheid state. You can't talk about what's happening to the Palestinian people. You can't offer any criticism there towards the government, towards the state of Israel. To me, that kind of comes across as like authoritarian. Because who are you to tell people which government they can and cannot critique? Because at the end of the day, if you're looking at human rights abuses here, how are you going to say that one country is above that or one government is above that and everyone else is not? This is where we are in this country. This is where we are now. You see? Let's go on.
And at Human Rights Watch for close to 30 years. Talk about Human Rights Watch stand on Israel, how it compares to Amnesty International's also did a big report on Israel as an apartheid state, but also your reports on Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Well, Human Rights Watch applies the exact same standards to Israel as we do to 100 other countries that we regularly monitor. That is to say,
that's right. How are you going to be selective about human rights? Human rights only matter in certain places. Give me a break.
We insist on scrupulous, factual objectivity, and then we apply those facts under international human rights and humanitarian law. So the exact same process we use every place else. Because there is an Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we also, as a matter of principle, scrutinize the other players in that conflict. So Human Rights Watch reports critically on the Palestinian Authority, on Hamas, on Hezbollah, and this is what we do in every other conflict around the world as well.
I also want to add too, and I did discuss this on RBN a couple weeks ago, it's not just the Palestinian people that are being treated that way in Israel. They're also doing this to Ethiopians in Israel as well. They're being treated with that same type of force. Get out of here. A lot of racism. If you look at some of the videos, follow Mint Press News on Twitter. They have a lot of video footage of this. It's just, they don't want, it's like basically like if you're not from there and you're not Israeli, it's like they're pushing people out. This is crazy shit. And you know why this is so dangerous? Because imagine if that ideology were to spread around the world. Imagine if another country starts to feel that way. Well, you know what? I don't like the fact that we have these refugees here. I don't like the fact that we have these immigrants here. Let's start pushing them out too. That's why it's so dangerous. Ay, ay, ay. I should see if I can get Kenneth on.
So there's really no difference between what Human Rights Watch does on Israel and every place else. The big difference is that there are a group of, organized supporters of the Israeli government, often masquerading around, behind sort of civic groups with very neutral sounding names, who attack anybody who criticizes Israel. And Human Rights Watch and me personally, we tend to be at the forefront of their attacks. Now, I don't think that's what was going on directly with the Kennedy School dean, but he easily could have read their material. Certainly since this decision was announced, these same groups have been saying, oh, Human Rights Watch is biased. But what they really mean is we hold Israel to the same standards as everybody else. They don't want, a few, somewhat fewer reports or maybe fewer tweets by me. They want no criticism of Israel. They want us to exempt Israel from human rights scrutiny. And no credible human rights group could possibly do that.
That's right. That's 100%. I'm so glad he called it out. See, look, they have Ken all the way in Geneva. Ken had to go to Switzerland. I'm just kidding. He probably had a conference or something there, but this is the second time Harvard has done this within a year and a half. I'm disgusted that I worked at that place. I really am. Like, it's one of those things when I was there, when I was in it, I guess I just didn't see those things, but it's disgusting. Just knowing like this is the ideology that they have. Jesus.
Who do you believe is behind the pressure for you, for example, not to be a fellow at the Kennedy School? Do you believe it's donors to Harvard, and what kind of role do they play there?
Oh, snap. See, Amy, I'm surprised Democracy Now! Mentioned that, because I told you guys, you got to see who donates to the school, and then you'll understand why the school does the things that they do. You got to please those donors to keep them coming back for more. When the donors aren't happy and they don't renew their donations, that's a problem for the university. Listen, I've worked in higher ed for over 10 years. These universities, they're not schools. And I know that sounds silly when I say that, but they're really not. They've become a business. That's all it's about. It's just about making money. And if it's not for these Ivy League schools, even if you were to look at some of the athletic schools, if you look at schools like I went to University of South Carolina, big sports school, even those schools, they still trying to make money too. They just make it through the athletes. Why do you have some of these college football players making $1 million a year? How much does the coach of the University of Alabama make? It's all about money now. College used to be a place that you go to find yourself, to be creative and free and open. It's not that way. It is very much corporate. It is very much corrupt. And it's all about making money. That's what it has turned into. Go ahead, Ken.
I'm not hearing you if you're...
Oh, can you hear me now? I'm saying, do you believe donors to Harvard played a role in your rejection as a fellow?
Now you're coming back.
He may have a little bit of a connection issue because he's abroad.
Do you believe your role as a fellow, do you believe that donors' roles to Harvard are a factor in your denial, the rescinding of your fellowship?
Well, I mean, I have no direct evidence of that, but I think it's the only plausible explanation. In other words, Elmendorf, the dean, he doesn't have a history of defending Israel. I don't think he personally cares. But as Michael Massing showed in his excellent expose in The Nation on this issue, the Kennedy School has a few big donors who are big supporters of Israel. And I think the real fear here is that, either he consulted with them or he feared what they would say, but he allowed their preferences to yield to his censorship. In other words,
let me just tell you something about the Kennedy School. Okay. Michael Bloomberg, who is a donor, Michael Bloomberg has an entire academic program named after him. Not kidding. That's how powerful some of these donors are. How you get a whole program named after you? What the fuck is this? Like, seriously? Very powerful. So I just want to disagree a little bit with Kenneth. I don't actually think the dean contacted the donors. I think it was probably the other way around. I think the donors contacted the dean. And I've seen this happen before too, working in higher ed, where our dean had made some decisions sometimes, and the donor contacted the dean and said that they would not be renewing their donorship because of a decision that was made. I can't get too much into it on here, but I think it may have been the other way around.
He apparently allowed donors to violate the principle of academic freedom. And this is a very serious problem. I mean, it's not just a problem for me personally. This is not, impeding my career in a significant way. But I think about, first of all, the younger academics who don't have, the visibility that I do, who are going to take from this lesson the view that if you touch Israel, if you criticize Israel, that can be a career-killing move. You'll get canceled. And that's a disastrous signal to send. But the other, I think, big issue here is that if there is any institution in the world, any academic institution that could resist this kind of donor pressure, it's Harvard. Harvard is, the richest university in the world. Harvard should be saying, we as a matter of principle will not accept contributions from donors who insist on violating academic freedom.
Harvard University, for those who are not aware, has the largest endowment in Massachusetts out of all the universities. I think MIT is second, but Harvard has the largest endowment. They have a lot of money.
They are not making that statement. Right now, they're just lying low and leaving us to have to surmise that it was this kind of donor pressure that led to this cancellation of my fellowship and this effort to really undermine academic freedom. I hope that Harvard takes this as an opportunity to clarify that donor preferences never will be allowed to violate academic freedom. But their silence so far says the opposite.
But Ken, I don't think, I'm going to have to, I'll see if I can reach out to Ken. Because honestly, Ken, I don't think that's going to happen. Money talks, and they'd rather continue to get that money than to not get that money. I hate to break it to Ken, but again, I worked there too. And I worked at MIT and I worked at Boston University. And I'm just here to tell you that money talks.
Peter Beinart had an interesting op-ed in the New York Times in August headlined, "Has the fight against anti-Semitism lost its way?" He said, quote, "Over the past 18 months, America's most prominent Jewish organizations have done something extraordinary. They've accused the world's leading human rights organizations of promoting hatred of Jews," Peter Beinart wrote. Talk about who these Jewish organizations are. Do you think they had anything to do with what happened to you? And your own background, your family in relation to the Holocaust?
I forgot to mention that Kenneth is Jewish, by the way. Just which makes this even crazier, okay? I forgot to mention that to you guys.
Well, first of all, me personally, I'm Jewish. My father grew up in Nazi Germany and fled in July 1938 to the United States. I grew up hearing Hitler stories. That's a lot of why I went into the effort to defend human rights. It was sort of what I brought from that experience. So, the accusation that I'm anti-Semitic is just ridiculous. But there is a real effort to redefine anti-Semitism to mean essentially criticism of Israel. Now, they don't say that explicitly. They say, oh, you're demonizing Israel. But, of course, human rights advocacy is about demonizing abusive governments. When Human Rights Watch reports on abuses and publicizes them, we are trying to demonize governments around the world. That's what we do. That's how we shame governments and pressure them into changing. So to say, oh, we're demonizing Israel, therefore we're anti-Semitic, is basically saying, don't criticize Israel. And, we're not going to fall for that ploy, but it worries me because it's cheapening the very important concept of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a real, vibrant threat. But if it is dumbed down to mean just any criticism of Israel, people are going to stop getting outraged about anti-Semitism and think, oh, this is just the abusive Israel government or its supporters trying to defend Israel. That it would be a shame for the effort to combat anti-Semitism.
I'm going to try to see if I can get in touch with Kenneth. If you want to watch the rest of that interview, it's on Democracy Now! Channel, and it's called Harvard Faces Outcry for Rescinding Post to Ex-Head of Human Rights Watch over criticism of Israel. So definitely check that out. Again, Betsy, thank you so much for letting me know about that story, because again, it's just another one. I'm like, here we go again. Another example of Harvard. I'll take that question on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. For one to qualify for human rights, Sabrina, one must first be considered human by empire. They're telling you what they think of Palestinians and Yemenis without actually telling you. Consider that the context of the day. Interesting. I didn't think about it that way. Let me go to some of the comments here in the chat. Conscious Citizen, I'm a new subscriber to this channel. Really glad my algorithm brought her my way. Welcome and hello. Greetings. At Kid, yes, the Harvard donors are making their own phone calls to the university leadership to ensure Harvard doesn't publicize or tell the truth about Israel government murdering Palestinians. There you go. Thank you for the super chat. Eric, do you think the American people will en masse support the Palestinian people? I remember in the 90s being all Israeli. Unfortunately, no, I don't think so, because mainstream media here heavily propagandizes the American people. And the narrative coming from mainstream media is that you are supposed to support the state of Israel. It's really sad, and thank you for this super chat as well. Not the best argument when you have to bribe and hold hostage legislatures, Israel. Bill says donor preferences have always been allowed to impact academic freedom all the way back to Rockefeller, 100%. These are things that I think people just don't realize. Okay, I'll pick up that other one, Eric. And thank you for this tip as well, Roger. Did Amy just say that the ACLU was in support of saying don't hire this guy? Man, 6th letter of the alphabet, the ACLU, that is if I heard that right. I have to go back and check. I have to check that, Roger, and I'll let you know. Okay, let's move on to this next story here. So this is probably not going to be surprising to most of you who follow these individuals, but there's this new thing going around now that even people who have described themselves as like an old school liberal, like Matt Taibbi has referred to himself, even people who have now identified as an independent, which Tulsi Gabbard has now done. Jimmy Dore has already always referred to himself as a lefty. And so forth. Now, these individuals, along with Glenn Greenwald, are being smeared heavily, and this time it is coming straight from MSNBC. You know, someone actually sat down and decided to write this article. How the populist left has become vulnerable to the populist right. I'm not even making this up. So let's get into it. So you'll see here's the pictures here. Glenn Greenwald, Tulsi Gabbard. There's Matt Taibbi. They mentioned Jimmy Dore later on in the article. This is what you got. You guys got to hear this to believe it. I can't even make this up. Like, some of the stuff is just freaking ridiculous. Okay, let's dive in here. A group of journalists and media personalities who were once at home on the far left has formed a niche but influential political subculture that encourages leftists to abandon leftism for the populist right. Its most recognizable faces are former icons of leftist discourse who have millions of diehard fans. Glenn Greenwald, a co-founder of The Intercept, known as one of the most powerful critics of the war on terror in the Bush era. First of all, let's stop right there with Glenn Greenwald. Let me make this bigger. And I believe I've asked you guys this question before, but we're going to ask this question again. I don't remember Glenn Greenwald ever calling himself a leftist. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. I don't remember him saying that. But let's go on. Matt Taibbi, a former Rolling Stone writer who was famous for excruciating defenders of neoliberalism and likening Goldman Sachs to a great vampire squid wrapped around the face of humanity. Matt Taibbi, they referred to him as a former Rolling Stone writer. Matt Taibbi has done more than that. He's written several books. Why would they just... Anyway, let's go on. Tulsi Gabbard, a formerly Democratic House member and 2020 presidential candidate, was aligned with the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. But in recent years, their focus has changed. These commentators have never hesitated to criticize Democrats alongside Republicans, but now they've pivoted to targeting liberals nearly exclusively while forming ties with the authoritarian right. Well, what do we tell you on this show? What do we tell you over at RBN? Why is there more of a focus on the Democratic Party and maybe more so for them as well? Is because everybody knows what the Republican Party is. The Republican Party doesn't try to pretend to be something that they're not. They don't try to pretend to be grassroots and know that they're not. You know what I mean? The Democratic Party, on the other hand, does try to pretend that they're something that they're not. They pretend like they're actually helping the people when they're not really for helping the people. They pretend like they are the pro-worker party when they are not the pro-worker party. They've sold out the working people. They're strike breakers. They're supporting corporate. They're supporting capital. The Democratic Party, and this comes from Chris Hedges, is the more effective evil, because they make people actually believe that they're actually the ones that's helping the people when they're just as corporate as the Republican Party. That's why there is the focus more so on what the Democratic Party is doing. Let's go on. Anti-lib populism might not necessarily convert leftists into MAGA activists, but it could still do damage by generating cynicism. You see this here? They don't even want you to criticize the Democratic Party. They don't even want you to critique it at all. They want no cynicism. On issues such as free speech, the war in Ukraine, and social inexclusivity, this group's commentary has garnered tremendous attention and plaudits from right-wingers, and some of them have grown fond of using conservative media platforms to spread their message. You see where this is coming from? You see this? By the way, you know who else uses these same talking points? Some of the shows in left independent media. The Majority Reports, the TYTs, they use that same rhetoric that MSNBC is using in this article. In 2022, this trend appeared to reach new heights. Gabbard served as a guest host for Fox News white nationalist in chief Tucker Carlson. Taibbi became right-wing Twitter CEO Elon Musk's go-to stenographer. Let me stop there for just a second. In a most recent interview that I saw with Elon Musk, he said that he's always voted Democrat. So there's that. Why are they coming after Matt Taibbi? Because Matt Taibbi released the Twitter files, and most of the information that has been released from the Twitter files has been about the Democratic Party. That's why people are calling Matt Taibbi right-wing now. So this is someone who's actually a journalist, and they want him to not report certain information. Don't go too hard on the Democratic Party. Where's the stuff about the bad things about the conservatives? Where's that? Matt Taibbi has been on multiple interviews explaining this, that look, this is the information that was found so far. They're still revealing more information. But they don't want Matt Taibbi to be a journalist. You see, this is how journalism has kind of split into this political divide as well. It's like you have these journalists that are just supposed to be known for bashing Republicans, and you have these journalists that are known for bashing the Democratic Party. But how dare you be a part of one of the parties and criticize the party and not do your job as a journalist? Let's go on. For a series of leaks from Twitter's internal documents meant to make Musk's takeover of the social media platform look necessary, Greenwald attended the premiere of a documentary about right-wing disinformation mogul Alex Jones and conducted a shockingly sympathetic interview with him. Again, I never remember Glenn Greenwald saying he was on the left. I never remember him saying that. So there's that. Now, why are you not seeing these people that I just mentioned? Why are you not seeing them on liberal media? Because they're not invited. Glenn Greenwald, They won't bring him back on liberal media. There's reasons for that, especially leaking like the Snowden information. They will not bring him back on liberal media. Jimmy Dore, they're not trying to bring him on liberal media. The only people that's really willing to have these people on, unfortunately, is on the right. But in this article, they're never going to mention that. They're not going to acknowledge it. Let's go on. Collectively, these and other lesser known pundits push a political position that could be called anti-lib populism. Lib as in the pejorative slang term for liberal, in currency among leftists and the right. Like all populisms, it purports to oppose elitism and speak on behalf of the people. But as a practice, it funnels people towards the snake oil populism of the right. Does it? Does it? I haven't been funneled to the right. Do you see how it's just the rhetoric? Anti-lib populism may not necessarily convert leftists into MAGA activists in mass, but it could still do damage by generating cynicism that could divide the left. Problem right here, divide the left. You see, they've been doing this more and more recently. They're referring to liberals and Democrats as the left. That's not left. Liberals are fine with the status quo. Do you see how these things they've co-opted the word progressive. The Democratic Party took that word, co-opted it. Now anybody can be a part of the progressive caucus. Now they're taking the word left and applying it to liberals when they do not mean the same thing. See how easily they're trying to confuse people? They're actually convincing people that Democrats are left. Democrats are not left. Let's go on. That's why the left must be vigilant about its rise. The free speech fallacy, one of the most prominent strategies of anti-lib populists, is casting liberal media as the biggest threat to free speech in America. Taibbi and Greenwald spent a lot of energy warning about cancel culture and opposing deplatforming and speech regulation on internet platforms, okayed by a liberal worldview. Some of it's legitimate. I, too, worry about opaque internet censorship and certain aspects of cancel culture, like self-sabotaging groupthink and targeting people's jobs for misbehavior. Honey, you're writing for MSNBC. You will not be affected. But what's odd about the anti-lib outlook is its singular focus on liberals. No, it's not odd. Because again, liberals pretend that they're for those things and they're not. Then they have this video here. How did Tulsi Gabbard go from self-styled progressive to guest hosting on Fox? Well, Tulsi, I can't really speak in reference a lot to Tulsi, except for these two things. Tulsi Gabbard made it very clear that she left the Democratic Party. She announced that. Tulsi Gabbard also is another one that is not invited on these liberal outlets. Why do you think this is why you see her on Fox News? Now, granted, does that mean she should have a show on Fox News? It's her choice. I don't really give a shit. Like, I don't really care. Oops, I said a bad word again. I'm supposed to get better with that. Anywho, they're not mentioning the fact that a lot of these people are not invited to have shows on liberal media. Is MSNBC inviting Tulsi Gabbard to have her own show on MSNBC? No, they're not. In fact, the moment that Tulsi Gabbard decided to support Bernie Sanders instead of Hillary Clinton, her political career, for the most part, through the Democratic Party was already done. Let's be real. Let's go on. The right is at least worrisome on the issue of restricting speech, and in some respects far more. The GOP has become an overt advocate for government censorship on college campuses and in school libraries. When he was president, Trump ramped up legal attacks on the media and harassed journalists. The MAGA right endeavors to dampen the very meaning of free speech by embracing disinformation as a political strategy. Billionaires who are hostile to the left own social media platforms and make decisions about speech based on profit motives. Yet somehow Taibbi has said he finds Republicans irrelevant on the matters of speech and has downplayed Fox's enormous influence on the right. I think what he means by that when he says irrelevant on the matters of speech, because again, going through the Twitter files, who was doing the censoring? Who's the one kicking people off of platforms? Who was the one telling, Twitter executives to remove accounts? That was the Democratic Party. All you got to do, again, go through the Twitter files material. We've reported on this multiple times as they released them. Those were the ones who were doing it. That's why. Now, let's go on. Greenwald focuses the lion's share of his criticism of censorship as a phenomenon tied to Democrats and liberal media. Well, if you are on a platform like YouTube, let's remember who owns YouTube. Miss Susan. And let's remember YouTube donated to Biden's campaign. Or Google. YouTube, Google. Susan is a Democrat. Susan kicking people off this platform. Susan's the one who's removing Susan's the one who made these rules and made all these stipulations. I told you they're stricter on the profanity rule now. That was another guideline they changed. This is Susan's company, boo. She's the one that has all these clauses in. You can't say this too many times. You can't talk about this. If you have this certain guest on, your people's videos being removed, people being censored 24/7. Susan is a liberal and she's doing that. Let's go on. Taibbi's blinker attitude about speech likely explains why Musk, who has revealed himself to be a QAnon-friendly fan of MAGA politics, appears to have entrusted Taibbi with a cache of Twitter documents to report on Twitter's history of controlling speech on its platform. First of all, it's not just Matt Taibbi who is reporting on the Twitter files. There's also Barry Weiss. There's three others too. Lee Fang. And I think the other one is Schwansberger. There's multiple journalists that are reporting on the Twitter files. But if you notice, they're mainly singling out Matt Taibbi. Keep that in mind, guys. To be clear, the leaks have helped shine a light on some deeply troubling issues, like the FBI's apparent input into Twitter speech regulation. But it's notable that Taibbi has exaggerated and misframed the import of his expose, and that by agreeing to conditions set by Musk regarding his access to the information and where he could publish it, he has tainted his findings with the aura of a comms operation. This is such a fucking mess. Like, it really is. This is just one big smear campaign. Let's get to the anti-war part. The populist right is not anti-war. Another example of how anti-lib populism tries to nudge the left to come to mistaken conclusions about the nature of the right is the war in Ukraine. Here we go. Now, Gabbard and other anti-lib populists have correctly pointed out that the Democratic Party has been overly blasé about nuclear escalation with Russia and has stigmatized even minor dissent over the issue of how the U.S. should approach vital democracy with Moscow. That concern overlaps with the leftist anti-war posture of groups like the Democratic Socialists of America. First of all, DSA has been the weakest on this issue if you want to talk about people on the left. So they don't even know what they're talking about. But the anti-lib populists focus almost all their energy on the Democrats, despite the fact that most Republican lawmakers share the Democrats' position. Because right now, the people in power is the Democratic Party. The people who were pushing the legislation and pushing all that money to Ukraine, for the most part, it came from a Democrat-controlled House. They had the majority. They don't now, but they had the majority all last year. That's where it was coming from. So there were Republicans who voted against some of those bills, but the Democrats all supported it. See, they leave that part out. They leave the part out that the president of the United States is a Democrat. They leave the part out that when it came to funding these wars, for the most part, even Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema went along with that. This is just, I'm going to tell you who wrote this article in a minute. This is a hot mess. Jesus. Let's go on. Gabbard cited Ukraine's policy as the primary reason she left the Democratic Party and slams it as controlled by warmongers. Greenwald trumps MAGA dissent on Ukraine aid as a sign of the GOP's political intellectual health. More worryingly, they implicitly imply the MAGA right is anti-war when it's anything but. Now, I don't agree with that per se. I think there are individuals on the right that claim to be, that say that they are anti-war. Also, I don't remember Matt Taibbi ever saying that the MAGA right is anti-war. So I don't know about that. While it's true that the MAGA wing's increasing hesitation to involve itself in Ukraine has the effect of calling for a less hawkish position than many Democrats, the actual ideology underlying the position isn't fundamentally anti-war. Well, neither is the Democratic Party, though. Do you see that? Let's get to there's the part here. Let me get to the part where they mention Jimmy Dore, this part. There are also other players who aren't as big as Gabbard. Greenwald or Taibbi are also involved in this game of pushing the left to consider right-wing populism across a number of different issues. Here it is. YouTuber Jimmy Dore deemed the self-described leftist lawmakers in the squad frauds for declining to try to block Nancy Pelosi's speakership to force the vote on Medicare for all, a strategic question that split the left at the beginning of the Biden presidency. Regardless of one's position on that issue, I had mixed feelings. It's illuminating to contrast Dore's eagerness to dismiss the squad as sellouts with his charitable attitude to the right. Just a few months later, he conducted a remarkable, credulous interview with the Boogaloo Boy, a member of a violent accelerationist movement with roots in the right-wing anti-government and white nationalism belief. Notice they don't go on to tell you who that member was and what that member actually believed. I, unlike some people, actually watched the interview. They don't tell you that Magnus was pro-LGBTQ, that he was at the Black Lives Matter rally, marching with Black Lives Matter protesters. See how they leave this piece out? They don't tell you that there's different segments of the Boogaloo Boys and that not all of them have the same beliefs. Do you see what I'm saying? This is done on purpose. And so they bring up the fact that Jimmy had called the squad frauds and that this action alone split the left. Nah, what split the left was the squad running through an organization called Justice Democrats, which was advertised as having this hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. And then once those punks got in there, they didn't do shit. That's what split up the left. So you had people who really wanted to push them and get them to do what they were supposed to do, which is outlined through Justice Democrats' policies, what they were supposed to do. And then you had the other segment that said, no, we need to be nice to them. They're still the best that we got. That's what split the left. We would have been better off not having them there. But see how they all gonna blame it is Jimmy Dore's fault because he called them frauds and sellouts. Look around. They have sold out. These strike breakers. Does she put that in the article? No, they don't put that in the article at all. strike breakers, sending money for war, NATO squad, sellout squad, Joe Biden's doing a great job squad, not going to challenge or press or push anything squad, I'm going to lie about getting Democrats concession squad. They are frauds and they did sell out. Call it what it is. Moving on. And then they go on to talk about the Red Scare. Now, I haven't seen that podcast. So now they're going to go on to say how anti-lib populism inverts left-wing populism. It is not unusual for leftist activists and thinkers to focus a significant amount of energy on criticizing Democrats, since Democrats are theoretically more likely to be receptive to or susceptible to left-wing ideas and are more realistic bargaining partners on a number of policy issues like expanding the welfare state. The welfare state. Meanwhile, the right is often seen as a lost cause, or sometimes the right is seen as indistinguishable from Democrats depending on the issue. But in anti-lib populism, liberal politics is portrayed as irreversibly corrupt, and the populist right is hinted at as an idyllic alternative. This is such a mess. This is such a mess. Well, let me ask a question. Why isn't Breaking Points mentioned in this article when Crystal and Sagar identify as this is a populist? Am I right? Isn't that supposed to be the point of Breaking Points? It's like this populist. Didn't they write that book about populism? Why aren't they mentioned in this article? You can read the rest of that if you want to. That is a long article. It is written by, put that back up on the screen so you can see that part. This article was written by Zishan Alim, MSNBC opinion columnist. And there's a reason why you got that job at MSNBC. Let's be real. There's a reason why he has that job. Again, just someone else who's there to run cover for the Democratic Party. I'm so sick of it, you guys. I'm so sick of it. Oh my God. LB says blame Jimmy Dore, but not the politicians. LOL. Exactly. Exactly. I can't believe someone actually wastes their time to write that shit. Anyway, that is a smear piece. That's what that is. So it's coming from mainstream media. And you know what's funny? If people who may not have been aware of who those people are, well, I think they all know who Tulsi Gabbard is, but people who may not have been aware about like Matt Taibbi or Jimmy Dore or whatever, guess what? They know who they are now. Kitty says to be left, you need to be anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist. Robeson, thank you for the super chat. Sabby, have you listened to Mike Presner's report / expose on Tulsi Gabbard? For those who haven't, I think they really should. I have not, but you're like the second or third person to tell me I need to look at that. So thank you for the reminder. Thank you for the super chat, Eric. Heartbreaking to think what would have happened with President Bernie and VP Tulsi. A reminder that local politics is the most important. There are no saviors. I agree. Betsy says can't split the left when they're not really left to begin with. Thank you. And DM, thank you for the super chat. All lives matter, including cats and dogs. I'm not sure what that's about. Weird. And yeah, I saw that from LB. Thank you so much for that. Okay. We are moving on to our final story here. Now, you guys know we have been covering the ballot initiatives that happened for 2022. We're covering the results. And tonight we're going to do Iowa and Idaho. These are very short. I think one of them, Iowa only has one, I believe. Yeah, Iowa only has one. So these are very short. So I'm going to do these tonight. And then I'm going to end with a video from Garland Nixon. There's something I want you to see that Garland Nixon said about the homelessness crisis in this country and all the billions of dollars that go out the door to the MIC. So we're going to end on that note tonight. All right, let's get going with Iowa. Iowa ballot initiatives. Iowa voters do not have the right to place their own initiatives on the ballot to pass and repeal state laws and amend the Iowa Constitution on their own. Voters only have the power to ratify into the Iowa Constitution what the legislature puts before them through what's called a legislative referred constitutional amendment, aka state legislative initiative. Iowa only had one ballot measure, and that was Iowa Amendment 1, the Right to Keep and Bear Arms Amendment. This passed by 65.17%. A yes vote supported adding a right to own and bear firearms to the Iowa Constitution and require strict scrutiny for any alleged violations of the right brought before a court. That was supported by State Representative Stephen Holt and the Iowa Firearms Coalition. There are several opponents, but I'll just list a few. Americans for Democratic Action, Iowa, Common Good, Iowa, Catholic Peace Ministry, Great Plains Action Society, etc. So there's a whole bunch of them there. So the right to bear arms, big one there for Iowa. Now let's boot scoot over to Idaho. Idaho. Citizens of Idaho may only initiate legislation as a state statute. Idahoans may also repeal legislation via veto referendum, but cannot place constitutional amendments on the ballot via initiative. The Idaho state legislature, on the other hand, may place measures on the ballot as legislatively referred constitutional amendments. So let's go ahead and get into the measures for Idaho. Idaho advisory ballot income and corporate tax changes and funding for education question. That's a long one. A yes vote or an approved vote supported the passage of House Bill 1, which changes the income and corporate tax rates to one flat tax rate of 5.8%, provides a tax rebate equaling the greater of 10% of the taxes paid by a couple or individual in 2020, or $600 per joint filer, or $300 for an individual, and allocates $410 million to the state sales tax revenue, to the public school income fund, and in-demand careers fund. This passed again by 79.76%. Damn. What did approval of the advisory question mean? The advisory question was a provision of the House Bill 1 asking voters about their positions on tax changes and education funding enacted by the state legislature in HB 1. An advisory question is a type of ballot measure in which citizens vote on non-binding questions, therefore did not enact or repeal HB 1. It was designated to express approval or disapproval of HB 1. So that's interesting. This was an advisory question, but the measure was approved. So there's another, did I say, wasn't there a note? Yes, there was a note here from Roger Meadows that said, why did Luke withdraw the initiative? Prop 1, a progressive tax initiative, and HB 1, a regressive tax initiative, are opposites, it seems. So let's see who approved this, who disapproved. How did House Bill 1 relate to Idaho Proposition 1, which was withdrawn from the 2022 ballot? This is important to note. Idaho Proposition 1 was a citizen-initiated measure that would have amended the state statute to increase the state income tax for individuals' trusts and estates with incomes above 250K, and couples filing jointly with incomes above 500K to 6,000K plus 10.925%. It would have also increased the corporate income tax from 6% to 8%. It qualified for the 2022 ballot on July 22, 2022. After the passage of House Bill 1, Reclaim Idaho, sponsor of the initiative, announced that it was withdrawing the initiative from the ballot. Luke Mayville, the founder of Reclaim Idaho, said, there are two ways a ballot initiative can win. One is by securing a majority vote at the ballot box. Another way is by forcing the legislature to do something they would never have otherwise done. By placing Proposition 1 on the ballot, the citizens of Idaho have forced the legislature to make the largest investment in Idaho public schools in a generation. What's wrong with making a large investment in education? I don't understand that. I don't understand that. Here's the arguments. State Representative Heather Scott said, I do not believe that our schools need another dime until we stop teaching critical race theory, until we remove the explicit sexual content from our libraries and the books in our libraries. I don't feel comfortable giving any more money. He makes this statement as if kids don't have access to the internet, as if kids have never seen like sexual content. There's no other way for them to see this information. That doesn't make any sense to me. State Representative Judy Boyle said this bill and this entire process is very disrespectful to our Constitution, to our voters, to our taxpayers, and to the incoming class of legislatures. We are telling them we do not trust them to make decisions, and we do not want to listen to their ideas on what they think about school funding. Very interesting. You know, one of the things that's always interesting to me is that the people who tend to want to ban like some of these books and we have to hide sexual content and kids shouldn't be able to see this or their teenagers shouldn't be able to see this or whatever. It's like, sometimes I wonder if some of those people who pretend to be so holier than thou, I think some of those people actually end up being some of the biggest freaks. Just a suggestion, something I've been thinking about. I think, you know, there was a song called The Freaks Come Out at Night. It was by Houdini. I really do think some of the people who really are so strict with like, whether it's like sexuality, sexual content, etc., even the whole CRT thing, I really do think some of these people in real life in secret are the freaks that come out at night. I don't know, man. I don't know. You can't be wrapped that tight. You just can't be wrapped too tight. Jeez, like, come on, man. Am I supposed to sit back and believe that none of these people have like ever smoked weed in their life, that they've never been introduced to these things at maybe that same age as well? My souls are like really sit back and believe that, because I don't. Thank you for the super chat, DM. No need to respond, but of course, BLM and all lives matter, not trying to be weird. Okay. Eccentric Cast says book banning has been America's pastime since the 1700s. Yeah, that was actually the subject matter in the movie Footloose. They were banning the books, man. I was like, what? People think Footloose is just about dancing. It's not. They banned the books and they were banning dancing. They didn't want people to dance in the town. Dancing is evil. It's sinful. Oh my God. I'll take that comment on Rockfin. Thanks. Thank you for the tip, Roger. Sab, they're scared they can't pimp us for votes anymore, scared of third party. I'd love to talk to this MSNBC columnist and tell her it's a him. The very base of the party depends on to keep them in power. Especially the Black community has no idea who the hell Matt, Glenn, Dore, and the rest of them are. They just know you're not delivering for them. Flint, Jackson, if you're that worried about losing the narrative, then deliver. And thank you for this. Bingo, Sabby, bingo. How do you know about who Houdini is, Sabrina? You're too young for that. R.I.P. Ecstasy. Because my dad listened to Houdini. When the freaks get dressed to go out at night, they like to web other jackets and change in spikes, rips and jackets all in their shirt, fresh mini skirts. The freaks come out at night. The freaks come out at night. The freaks come out. Yeah, my dad listened to that song. I think he still has those records, to be honest. Yeah, that's how I know about that stuff. Okay. I saw something I wanted to put up here before I roll out. I can't find it now. It was really funny. Ben, Sabby making me feel better about the creepy stuff I've said before. I'm telling you, some of these people, I think they're the real, they're like the closet freaks, you know? Joe says Rick James super freak. There you go. There you go. She's a very freaky girl. The kind you date. Let me stop. Anywho, I want to play this from Garland Nixon. I shared it on RBN as well, but I want to head out with this because this is spot on. And we need to talk about the homelessness situation in this country and all the money that is continuing to go to war and the military industrial complex instead. So let's ride out with this.
This is the U.S. empire. Look at that. Shanty towns. People live in these things. They find pieces of cardboard. Look at that, an old boat. Look at the streets. This is the U.S. empire. This is the country. This is the United States. These people live in this right now. Look at this. This is the country that we live in. This is the country that just is in the process of spending $858 billion on the military-industrial complex right now. Look at the streets. The stores are closed everywhere, just collapsed. Look on both sides of the streets. Businesses closed. One of the things that exacerbated this was the lockdowns. People couldn't work. They couldn't make a living. So the last 3 years has taken a dramatic turn. This is the United States. What the hell are we doing? Sending all of this money to Ukraine. That's it. That's Oakland, California. Shanty towns, garbage, poverty. Look at that. That's America. That's what we got now. People have nothing. Is that the great shining country on the hill? Old RVs that they built in there. People are living. Cars. People have cars. People drive that over there because they have jobs, but they don't have a house. Look at this place. This is the United States. This is what we're looking at now. I think you've seen enough. You looked at those pictures. Is that a country that is going to collapse? Is that a country that may be collapsing? Or is that a country that has collapsed? It's Ukraine. It's a military outpost. That's what it is. Cold, hard reality. It's a military outpost. People can say it has about religion or ethnicity or this group, but we're giving billions to that military outpost while the country looks like this.
That rally is happening February 19th, 2023 in Washington, D.C. I will be there. Rage Against the War Machine. Garland Nixon is spot on. And I'm going to end with that. So, all right, guys, you know how we do this. Please have a good weekend. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.